You're probably tucked up on the sofa or in bed watching this movie. You've clicked on play without really knowing what to expect. You probably thought you were watching a documentary film about contemporary art, about the phenomenal rise of an artist whose works fetch millions in the best auction houses, didn't you? And then you run into my face. You're wondering what I'm going to tell you. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved telling stories. I don't care if this one's true or not. I like stories about art because they have nothing to sell. If you're looking for a moral, you'll find one. And if we don't, we'll at least have the doubt inside us as to whether it all really existed. When it comes to art, people often have strong opinions. The bourgeois agree on the priceless value of a work and play the trader with canvases as they would with oil or diamonds. It's always a good idea to have a fashionable artist in your home and to hate the scapegoat, usually along with everyone else. The poor, for their part, don't often have the time to debate the prowess of the great Impressionist painters or the quality of contemporary works because they don't have the time or the money, or perhaps simply because they don't give a damn. A lack of education. I've always believed that art needs no education, that it comes from the heart, from instinct, and that it can cross ages, borders, and languages without the slightest friction. When a work of art is successful, it touches, it divides, it nourishes. It has an impact, sometimes invisible, on the minds and hearts of those lucky enough to come across it. And yet, one thing's for sure, if Picasso were from our time, he'd probably have an Instagram account or a Twitter account or both. Maybe he'd be dropping "put a blue thumb at the bottom of my video" on his YouTube account. You don't exist if you're not on the networks or in the big galleries. Fucking world. Michelangelo once said, "The greatest danger for most of us is not that our goal is too high and we miss it, but that it's too low and we reach it." The story I'm going to tell you today is the story of a small group of people who are fortunate enough to witness the birth of a major work of art, the work of an artist who has decided to set himself unattainable goals. For many years, he, who still claims to be a disciple of the great masters, set his works off the beaten track. He worked in the shadows, year after year, toiling away at his art by the light of small lamps in his studio. The story I'm telling you today is a true one, whose evidence and stigma will surely be erased by time. And yet, it did happen. Suburbs of Paris, year 2020. While you stared at your television set, sitting comfortably on your sofa watching the world go by, a small, discreet world went about its daily business within the walls of an old gold foundry. This mystical place had been home to many a story. It is said that the Banque de France used to melt gold here, that vehicles entered through the great iron gates, still visible today, and that thick smoke rose from the gigantic chimneys, visible from all over Paris like diabolical furnaces. Later, abandoned. It had played host to clandestine parties, then, little by little, slum landlords, a garage, artists and handymen. In every sense of the word. Some would even call it a hideout, a cutthroat. Others would utter the word squat with horror. But it had nothing to do with the squats of Parisian bobos who want to ruffle their feathers with a little canile thrill. A parallel world appeared here, outside our society, that summer. This little world was about to be shaken up by a bedtime story.
How did I come up with the idea for this fresco in a disused building like this? I found a book in Ilia's studio upstairs and came across two books. There was one by Dostoevsky and another book about Chapel 16. I said to myself, this corridor with its natural light, its glass roof and all, with its very special architecture, to me it's a chapel. It's a chapel, so you need paintings that are worthy of the place. That's what I said to myself, there's something special here. It made me think of the Sistine Chapel, this corridor, this big wall at the end of the corridor, rising to a height of over 8 meters. I thought, we've got to make a modern Sistine Chapel. On this one, there'll be the Last Judgment, with Jesus in the center, between the two windows. That's going to be the main piece. I'll start with that. Then there will be the panels here, the Genesis episodes, on the sides here. It was almost a sign. It doesn't make any sense. You're in a place like this and you come across art books. It's pure chance. We'll probably use scaffolding with wheels. And maybe a ladder. Any way you can. Hey Bart! Ça va?
I know Pascal, I've watched him from afar. It's been a long time since I arrived here in Evry.
I arrived here by chance because Ilyes, an artist and painter friend of mine, had been here for over a year. So he showed me the place and I fell straight into love with it. It really has an energy about it. Something indescribable. Something very special. In fact, it's like a film. When you first come here, it's a film.
Je m'appelle Mahmoud Ben Yahya. J'arrive tout droit de l'Algérie. J'ai pris le bateau. Et depuis, je suis à la France. Je suis resté un petit peu à Marseille. Quand je suis venu de Marseille, j'ai atterri direct ici.
This really is a very small town with very atypical characters. It's not a 100% artist squat either because it's not all artists. There are very few artists, in fact. There are maybe 4 or 5 of us working here. And there are guys who have businesses, there are guys who do shoots, there are illegals. It's a world that revolves around the unexpected. And it's out of this chaos that we can create something unexpected, which is a modern Sistine Chapel.
Des anecdotes à raconter sur ce lieu. Bon, déjà moi j'aime bien passer aux choses sérieuses, donc le système il est que, en vrai je m'appelle pas Mahmoud Ben Yahya, on va reprendre dès le départ. Non, je m'appelle Bella, ça fait 1 an que je suis à la fonderie, j'ai 48 ans, je suis né en France, j'habite Créteil d'origine, 94. À la fonderie, ça fait 1 an que je suis ici. J'ai été amené ici par le biais d'un ami qui m'a présenté au directeur, au producteur de clips et tout, machin, bref.
Me, I'm the manager, I welcome the clients, try to be with them, to be available, you know? So it goes quite well. Generally, it goes very well. We welcome clients in the lodge up there, and then they put on their show here, they do as they please, their videos comfortably. But otherwise, right now, there's been a lot of events happening in this hallway. Everything from fashion shows, music videos, raps. Otherwise, there's the bus, where last time, there was a Caribbean atmosphere inside. There were 30 chicks dancing on the bus. The bus was moving all over the place and everything. This is the torture room. This is where we bring everyone. From here on, there's water on the floor, so we have to empty it every time we do a clip. But some people even ask us to leave the water on. And one time there was a girl, she even bathed in it almost. She actually put her hands in, her hair fell into the water, and she stood up. The water's a bit stagnant. I advised her not to do that, but apparently she was delirious. And otherwise, they did a lot of things at the bottom. It's a shame you can't see it, it's so huge. And frankly, they really take the mood out of it. Long live the artist, because you transform a room and sometimes you don't even recognize it. It's incredible. So we're going to go up, we're going to do a little tobogganing. Here they even turned on the stairs. They often shoot there because they're doing the scenes with the shit ciphers, you know, little rap clippers and stuff. It's all fake shit, all fake money, but at least they're into it. Boom. It's a bit of a mess compared to the last clip, but in general afterwards you place the furniture as you like. Right now we've got a little weight room. We've got Pascal's fresco, P-Boy, which is quite magnificent. Personalized, a bit updated. Cap on backwards, broken phone. That's about it for the foundry. But after that, you can do much, much better. There's still a lot to do, so we'll keep moving forward. But I like the artistry. Frankly, it gives people freedom of expression and all that, which means you meet lots of interesting, enriching people, and frankly, it's a decent little job. Long live the artist.
I live in Ivry, and Ivry is like a small village. You know, it's a bit like Montreuil, but perhaps more subdued. There are fewer drug dealers, more holdups, that's all.
It really makes sense to create, especially with the coronavirus. We've all had our schedules thrown off a bit. Usually I don't have the time to work on the same piece for several months at a time, but this was my chance to do something really, perhaps the most ambitious I've done so far, to paint for 2 months non-stop every day on a large facade. And above all, that when you're in front of the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo's work, the Last Judgment, the vault, the whole vault of the chapel, you know that there's something indescribable, something transcendental, where you have a notion, where there's a kind of respect. You want to keep your distance from it. That's the sense of the sacred, and that's what I want to reproduce here. And my work revolves around that on this piece, and also on the meaning of God, of creation, of life and death, of the meaning of life.
Many people think that art is an instantaneous act, that talent is enough, and that only great minds are born with the genius to create works of art to their liking. The reality is far less glamorous in the end. Nobody knew much about Pascal, or even if Pascal was his real name. But what everyone agreed on was that he was a hard worker. Each of his works was the result of extensive research, documentation, and experimentation. He would spend several months pondering a simple idea, taking the time to let it mature as one does with infused rum. He fed his reflections with reading, research, and gradually came to compose what would become his new challenge. Pascal embodied, without claiming to, the very definition of an artist. One who masters the knowledge and techniques of an art. And he did so in the manner of a craftsman who sharpens his knowledge and practice every day without a care in the world. Gradually, the time came to make the first sketches.
On a fresco like this, you often use a lot of background. I work quite a lot in transparency, where there are zones that will keep a common background, and in fact the doors will come out, like there's one that's white, another that's really dark. It's going to stand out. Here's the toilet, here's the kitchen, and here's the access to the studio. And upstairs there's a guy who lives there. I've painted over the doors here. I'm just going to paint them a little gray before I start the grid.
You can't paint a fresco like that with a spotlight and say, come on, I'll work at night and then do my outlines. The projector doesn't work. You'll get too many distortions on the edges, you see, it's not possible. So you have to do a real fresco job. In other words, checkerboard work. So you make your fresco on a paper checkerboard and then reproduce it square by square. So if you like its drawing, that's real drawing. And then the support is disgusting. The support is hellish. It's uneven all over, so you see there's an effort involved.
I try to start from the center and make a line that's already 1 meter long. Because you see the floor isn't quite straight. So as it's not quite straight, I'm going to start from the highest part and start squaring at the 1 meter level. I'm going to make a horizontal line that's going to stay pretty straight. And then I'll have to start from the left and begin squaring each meter, which will make little squares, and I'll go up like that as I go along. Ça sent bon. Hay 400 personajes.
¿En serio?
400. 400. Mucho cada vez.
Hay que trabajar bastante.
So this is a computer model. I started from the original of the Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel. The original is a little longer, so I had to modify the whole composition. It's a tricky one. I don't want to press on the wall. I've got a feeling that if I press on the wall, I'm going to smash my face in. In the worst case, it's the stepladder that gets smashed and I jump on the platform. Come on. Huh? We're 3 meters from the gutter here. Well, some kind of big pipe. 4 meters. 5 metros. 6. And 7 is here. So this is really the overall model, but I've actually divided it into 6 parts to really get all the details, as there are over 400 characters on this model to really get all the details. And I'm going to grid the 6 sheets so that I can then transfer the whole original model directly onto the wall. Yeah, I actually have to find the dimension. I have to find a meter on my sheet, how many centimeters it is. And once I've got that information, I can transfer everything to the rest. See? That's the problem I'm facing. There are lots of characters in the compo that I've moved around. And this whole area here too, I've stretched to the side. So I've added characters in these areas and these areas here, you see. So that everything would fit into the format and the windows would fit into the frame. So that was a bit of work. Then there was all the reworking of the characters. Because this is the original, and you see this is a woman, it's a Sibylle. Her arms are almost my legs, so I reworked it, you see. And here you can see it in the version I reworked. She's thinner, you see. I made her breasts a little more contemporary. A different cut. She's the same. Then you've got everything shifted, you see, in relation to the windows. There are a lot of elements, so it's better not to start with something that's wrong. Michelangelo would have loved to be able to work with a printed sheet. He'd use Photoshop, that's for sure. Here I can see that he's good, thanks to the gutters and all, which are on the same axis. So there, I think we're good. There's a bit of stress, but it's more about the technical aspects, like, are we going to get the scaffolding? Will it hold? Will I fall off the scaffolding? There are also unforeseen circumstances. You see, we don't have the scaffolding from Monday. We were supposed to have it for 2 months. So the little stress is going to be finding a replacement. Do we buy it? Do we rent it? There are a few uncertainties, you know, like, yeah, it's more of a technical issue.
It's not the same to be offered a glass of water in a well-stocked bar as to be offered a glass of water in the middle of the desert. You see, the concept of gratuity in art and in the divine, I believe, is fundamental. It's something that is effectively priceless, so to speak. The difference between the two works is that the other was paid for in cash, whereas here it's a desire that drives this fresco. It's a real will. I'm not going to say divine, I'm not going to get dreamy.
Unlike Michelangelo, who in his day received commissions from Pope Julius II or various popes. As for me, since there are no commissions, my problem is to find the financing to pay for the material, the scaffolding and the paint. And the idea I came up with was to appeal to patrons around the world in a decentralized way, using Bitcoin and Ethereum and doing decentralized financing without going through any platform. As I've always done with my murals up to now, by implementing Bitcoin QR codes for donations, which have worked pretty well so far, and that's how I plan to finance this project.
That summer tasted like the end of the world. While the majority of countries were emerging from more or less extended periods of confinement, the geopolitical context was tense. COVID, Black Lives Matter, Sino-American tensions, explosions in Beirut, protests of all kinds, worldwide, and all this against a backdrop of financial markets on the brink of collapse. Paradoxically, the atmosphere in the foundry was one of calm. This small world seemed sheltered from the world's questions, yet it had its own crises and diplomatic tensions. That summer, the heat wave offered both beautiful pool days and the conditions for an explosive atmosphere. In the midst of all this, everyone went about their business with their own little routines. Pascal was going to go through with his challenge, whatever the cost.
Kunya mamao.
Great. You can just help me with the rope once I'm up on the second floor here. You just send me the rope. That way I can pull the bag up. Easy. Thanks. I'm going to leave little by little towards the center, and we'll see what we can do today. It's the first day, so we're a bit in the dark. We don't know how long it'll take. We'll just go for it and see. It's like good cooking. Oh, it's gonna take time though. You know, I can see that. There are lots of little body details and stuff. You see, for me, painting masterpieces by the great masters is also a bit of a school. It's a bit like taking a live painting lesson. And this is the case. I've been getting slapped in the face for a while now. In the face. From left to right. It's hot in here. I think I'll be painting in shorts this summer.
I think it's a lifestyle. It's not the lifestyle you have, it's the routine. You don't have a routine here, you can make your own life too. Everyone does their role, their work, and enjoys the moment. That's what I'm looking at here. It's not like working and then getting on the metro and arriving home tired. It's not something like that. You work here with good vibes and that's it. Even here, you can live next door. Where we work, it's cool.
Il y a une bonne ambiance, attention. Hey, ici, on est... C'est une famille, quoi. C'est une grande famille, hein. T'as besoin de sel, tu tapes à la porte à côté. Tu veux manger, t'as pas à manger, tu montes là-haut, tu manges. Tu veux te doucher, t'as pas d'eau chaude chez toi, tu vas à droite, là-bas, tu te douches. Tu veux un caleçon, t'as pas de caleçon. Ton caleçon, il est déchiré, t'en as plus. Tu prends, tu vas chez le voisin. Ah, et où ton armoire, ton sac, il est où? Hein? Oh, celui-là, il me plaît. Hop, tu prends le caleçon, tu t'habilles. T'as pas de serviette. Elle pue. Elle est sale. T'as pas d'argent. T'as tout ce qu'il faut à la fonderie. Viens à la fonderie. Tu t'enrichis. On dit la fonderie. C'est pas Zama, tu crois que toi c'est Zama, c'est pour fondre. C'est pour faire fondre, c'est ça? Ah non, la fonderie ça veut dire c'est fondé. Ah ouais, non, vous avez rien compris. Ah ouais. La fonderie c'est Zama, c'est fondé, c'est un pilier. C'est la fonderie, elle est fondée quoi, c'est fondé. Tu vois? C'est pas pour fondre le fer, ah non, c'est pas ça la fonderie. Vous avez rien compris, vous. Ah ouais, vous êtes loin de la plaque.
On pensait que c'était calme, mais en fait non. Do I often paint at night? Yes, when I'm in the studio. I make paintings. I paint even more at night than during the day. But here on a fresco like this, it's better to paint during the day to have natural light and see what I'm doing better. Because at night, I can't see much. That's why I put a spotlight on the wall, so I can move ahead quickly and be on time. I'm a bit behind schedule. It allows me to see the wall in a slightly different way than I did during the day.
C'est pas le meilleur plat, mais c'est le que tu manges tous les jours. Hein. Ça s'appelle sudado là-bas. Sí, real.
They're all sources of inspiration, you know, even philosophical, you know, you talk to them and stuff. It's much more inspiring than talking in a contemporary art gallery. It's going to be empty, you know. Here it's really people who are whole, who aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect, me first. But there's really something human about this place, about people really, how they are. There's an antique feel to it, I'd say.
It's important to understand that there's also an accumulation of injuries. Some people are dented. There's pain too, like in childbirth. It's this dualism between pain and well-being that allows you to give birth to almost supernatural phenomena when you want to.
Well, if you want me to sum up the antique, stay here for a day, you'll understand what I mean. And imagine, in contrast, a vernissage in a contemporary art gallery with conceptual works and the discussions that will surround them. There, you've got it.
Regarde-moi ça, mon frère. Vous mangez pourquoi, vous? Et toi, avec ton corps de lâche, l'autre avec sa troisième couille. T'es moi, il n'arrive même pas à le soulever. Non, j'y crois pas. Ah ouais. Oh non, non. Oh non, non, oh non, non, il a failli tomber. Ah ouais. Eh, arrête la 8 hein. Ça te va pas, hein. Passe à la tourtelle. Oh putain de merde.
To 20 people, and the 20 of them are going to give you a different answer, but obviously, in my eyes, it's the contrast created between a work created with immense care over a long period of time, over several months, and a place which, like most of these places, is dedicated to the ephemeral. So on the one hand, we have the ephemeral, and on the other, we have a sublime, anachronistic scream. The contrast is very strong. After that, it's true that there's a slightly political meaning behind it. It's forgotten art. In other words, there's so much undermining going on of any higher understanding of art, of the artistic process, that in the end, the artists who are inspired or who have a sincere, authentic and demanding approach to excellence, it's artists like P-Boy who end up painting here. Doing a fresco like this here when it should be a public commission for a very large wall in a very beautiful location. The paradox is real.
Là, pour tout ce que j'ai fait, là, j'en suis à 16 jours de travail. En fait, la difficulté, ça a été le temps. Je pensais faire ça en une semaine. Et là, on est déjà à plus de 2 semaines. Il y a plus de 400 personnages à faire, donc c'est un peu dépassé par la complexité de l'œuvre, quoi. Alors, je m'en rends compte, en fait, en le faisant, c'est que tu te prends une leçon d'humilité dans la gueule par rapport à Michel-Ange et au boulot qu'il a fourni là-dessus. I've inlaid 2 or 3 heads of local guys from the fornery so that it resonates with the place a little. For example, there's my neighbor at the bottom left of Jesus with the barbecue grill. That's my neighbor. As in the original, he's a guy with a shaved head, Saint Laurent. On the far left of the window on the left, that's Enrique. He's a character who lived here for years, so it makes sense. There's Hebert, the Colombian, holding a cross. And the father at the end, with his tattoo on his right arm there. There's Mohammed, Bella's son, holding arrows with his long hair there. In fact, I also took them because they looked a bit like the characters in the original fresco. So it was a good fit, and the result is modern, contemporary faces. In the original, he's a damned man. And here too, he's a damned man dragged to hell by demons. And in the original, the one biting his thigh is a snake. A green snake. And then for a change, I decided to make a staff. It's a staff that was here. It's going to be all black at the end. This is a staff that was here. His name was Mocha, who bit everyone. One guy in particular, a mechanic, got bitten on the thigh. Same thing, same place. It's another element that's in symbiosis with the place. And there's another thing I added, the cornucopia on his right arm. The cornucopia, you know, is this kind of horn. Sometimes it's gold, sometimes it's silver, from which comes abundance, fruit. It represents excess, lubris. And here, in fact, are blue cards. I haven't put the color on yet, so you can't see. But they're blue cards coming out of her cornucopia. And she turns to dust. It's a kind of metaphor for wealth, for money. Maybe the guy thought he was going to the parasite because he had money, but he didn't. He's one of my favorite characters, even in the original. In the original Judgment Day, he really has a power in his eyes. Maybe it's something that inspired Courbet with his Desperate. All the way to the top left and all the way to the top right, in fact, it should be 50 centimeters higher. And in the end, I think it's better this way, actually. The result is something slightly different from the original Chapel 16 fresco. And at the same time, I think it goes better with the compo of the windows in the place. And Jesus in the center, he's a bit taller too, compared to the other characters. So it makes him even more majestic, and it really adds. Desperate. Bonjour.
On peut tout enrouler sur avec. Alors.
Salut.
Bonne journée.
Au revoir. Salut Max.
Paraîtrait que le silence est la meilleure alternative. Nous on a choisi de faire du bruit, pardonner notre impertinence. Chaque jour qui passe est bon à prendre pour s'affranchir de leur matrice. Même si glissanter la piste, ils peuvent cimenter la vitre. Si on passe, ils paieront cher et je parle pas de finance. Ou c'est peut-être la nature humaine. On est fait pour vivre au soleil, mais l'inspiration est devenue lunaire. Donc tous les soirs au point de départ, je fais toutes les nuits le même trajet. De mon subconscient à ton air auditif, en passant par les coins où j'aime rapper, dont j'aimerais me rappeler. Une fois que j'aurai accompli mon projet, ma destinée, appelle ça comme tu veux. Les yeux d'une femme qui finira sûrement par partir. Les mains que j'aurai serrées, la drogue que je vais sûrement reprendre et le blast des salopards de ma clique. Ouais, je pense peu souvent à toi, Malika le mort. Mais le jour où tu viendras me chercher, je t'aurais peut-être attendu dans des couloirs, à schéma au ralenti, en attendant que la raison revienne. À cheval sur 2 siècles, une sale odeur de fin de l'espèce, mais on garde la pêche. Un jour un mec m'a dit que tout ça c'était qu'un test, une étape. Et tant que le bateau reste à flot, je fais comme si je m'en tape. Et la race n'a pas d'importance, je marche qu'avec des gus qui veulent rien savoir. Fidèle à mes blancs, mes noirs et à ma matière grise. À la mémoire de Salimo également. J'oublierai pas que même le ciel a pleuré quand on a fini par se revoir. Oh j'bad, 7-5 dans le dos, 4 dans le Vaussaire, 16 le millésime et des milliers d'autres putains de chiffres au compteur. 444 nuits.
J'en sais plus.
Hola. Abre. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Ya bien? ¿Todo bien?
Bueno, llevamos 3 semanas trabajando acá en lo que será el fin del mundo, pero acá con el maestro pintando acá, acabando la imagen de lo que será nuestro fin del mundo. Países, bueno, en fin, ya no piense nada en nadie. Acá, sinceramente, la gente no mira mucho los artes, se ha perdido ya el punto de la razón. El cielo, el infierno, donde posiblemente vayamos casi todos. Todos iremos ahí porque nadie puede decir que es buen cristiano. Todos han cometido errores en esta vida, todos, hasta el cura, el papa, todos. Para eso, para que reflexione el mundo. Por eso le doy un aplauso al maestro Leonardo da Vinci, porque es descendencia de Leonardo.
La différence d'art en galerie et l'art ici, oh, je sais pas, j'en sais rien. En fait, je dirais plutôt que l'art en galerie, c'est programmé, c'est préparé, et que l'art en extérieur, comme ça, c'est improvisé. Je veux dire que par là, l'art en galerie, tu veux une table, on va t'apporter une table et 4 chaises tout de suite. Alors que dans un endroit comme la fonderie, tu veux une table, on va t'amener 2 tréteaux, on va t'amener 2 tréteaux et des tréteaux, je sais pas si c'est des tréteaux, hein, et une planche en bois. C'est un exemple que je te donne. Ou alors on va te prendre une chaise en bois, une chaise en fer, une chaise grande comme ça, une autre petite comme ça. Et c'est plus sociable, et c'est plus vivable, et c'est cool, quoi, c'est bien, c'est ça l'ambiance, quoi, de la fonderie. C'est ça le truc bien de la fonderie. C'est qu'avec rien, on peut faire beaucoup de choses.
Il y a du peinture simple. No te puede dar una idea, no te puede dar un mensaje, no te puede hacer cambiar algo de ti. Eso es lo que importa. Si tú quieres mirar algo, tienes que valorarlo y sacar algo de lo que estás viendo. Entonces así lo puedes interpretar de esa pintura. Tú tienes un mensaje y algo va a quedar en tu mente. Algo que puede que lo utilices o no, pero es algo que va a quedar. Y es importante mejor hacerlo que no hacerlo. Y eso es lo que pienso.
It's not like I do a big shit and say, yeah, I really thought about it, it was something. No, it's learned. There are 2 sides to it. It's like philosophy. You've got a spiritual side and a positivist side. You can choose, you can even play with both. But you still have to understand these symbolic, semiological realities. You see, it's the expression of ideas. An artist without a message has no art.
Como obra del arte se hace también con conocimiento de la cultura, de escribir, leer, ingeniería y de todos los ángulos. Por lo tanto se ha perdido, hay que recuperar. Esa es la misión de nosotros. De Leonardo, acá el maestro Leonardo, que lo vemos que es un poquito tímido, Pero ahí está él. Pero él se divierte, es su diversión de él. Eso es lo bueno, que lo hace con amor, no lo hace por dinero, nada. ¿Entiendes? Él lo hace porque le nace la sangre. Él lleva en la sangre. Lleva la sangre árabe y sudamericana. Y la francesa también, que para por todos lados. Y el mundo francés agradece al maestro que está pintando por su tiempo valioso que deja de estar hasta en su hogar por estar acá. Ya llevamos como mes y tanto ahí, dándole aquí, dándole allá, dándole los puntos importantes para reflejar los puntos al mundo. Porque este cuadro lo tiene que ver el mundo.
Art is aesthetic. The classics tell us that aesthetics is a natural system of proportion. Natural means that, as in Vitruvian Man, in beauty, in the natural form of a growing plant, you find the same system of proportion as in yourself. So we carry this balance, this harmony within us. We are harmonious beings. That's why we're alive.
I believe that what fundamentally creates this feeling of universality in the concept of beauty and art, through a kind of common sense, corresponds to this kind of trilogy: the good, the true, the beautiful. That's it, that's the rightness, that's the harmony. It's a balance, quite simply. That's it for me. Universal art.
It's not necessarily the size of the project that's important, or the number of hours spent, or the number of characters. It's what it's going to convey, what it's going to remain afterwards, what it's going to be used for in concrete terms. You know, showing that there's something above all that. I'm not saying I've understood everything yet. We're all eternal disciples, eternal pupils. You see, Michelangelo, in 500 years, there's going to be some little twerp who's going to redo his version. For me, it revealed things about myself, about life and all those existential questions.
The adventure of the Sistine Chapel was coming to an end, and this little world went on with its life as if nothing had happened. Besides, the building would undoubtedly disappear in the next few years without anyone taking offense. For once, a major work of art had become an integral part of human life, without having to pay for it. This work was there, these works were there, these men were there. Invisible so-called experts. No bank, no social network, no gallery. Perhaps this was the sign that, as an artist, he was foolproof, and that even if the world fell apart, true art would always find a place, a loophole, an interstice, to squeeze into, to push, and exist.
We are living in an age when a citizen, an individual, can challenge the powers that be. Via the internet, via video, that's what's happening here. In other words, if we don't get completely destroyed by the banking system, if we succeed in a global political proposal emerges in the coming decades, it's clear that we won't be moving towards the same system of daddy's democracy of the network. We'll be moving towards something much more direct and spontaneous. We may be moving closer to the anarchism of Proudhon, who said that anarchy is not the absence of order. It's about managing what you have to manage yourself. The rest is left to the state. This is the opposite system. The state manages everything it can, and what it can't, it leaves to us. Do you see the problem? That's what we call, in my eyes at least, the pendulums of history. It's just one of dozens of events where initiatives are taken. We support an initiative, we get together, we form a collective, we try to get a message across.
Diablo. Désolé pour le diable. Merci Al Pacino. Moi j'aime bien parce que toi t'as mélangé l'ancien avec la moderne. C'est ça, c'est génial. C'est magnifique. Chacun sa tablette, chacun son téléphone. Après t'as des délires, après Pascal, je sais pas qu'est-ce que tu vois dans ton rêve. C'est génial en tout cas.
I'm doing the NFTs at La Chapelle. The NFTs are digital collection works. In other words, I took photos of the fresco. As I can't sell the fresco physically, I can't move it, and it's ephemeral because it will disappear one day. The way to make it permanent over time, beyond photos posted on social networks, is to give my collectors the chance to become owners of this work too. In this way, it no longer really belongs to me, but to people who love it and who will keep it digitally. For me, NFT is a tool that enables it to live forever. What I've done is, as there are 400 characters in The Last Judgment, there's a focus on each character, and there will be a unique NFT, unique edition for each character. To explain, this is something that allows me to make a living today and allows collectors to own the digital works I create, which wasn't the case until now. It's something very recent, and I can now almost make a living from it without working on the side, without being a service provider, to really create the works I want in the places I want, when I want. I don't think we've yet grasped the full extent of what it is and how it's going to revolutionize the world.
To live the longest, be curious the longest. Never be blasé about anything. Neither art, especially art, nor love. Well, art in general, after all. Love is art too. You must never be blasé. Above all, always be curious, 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 curious. What are we here for? Just over 3/4 of a century for most people now. Damn. I'm in too much of a hurry. You have to be in a hurry in this life. It goes fast. It goes really fast. But it's fucking fun. Staying curious, that's the basis.
Yo pienso que deberíamos interesarnos más por crecer personalmente, por valorar lo que tenemos, por vivir el día a día y por no preocuparnos de las cosas materiales, valorar las personas y valorar la tierra, la naturaleza, que es lo que tenemos, de lo que somos. Con eso podríamos comenzar a cambiar.
The bottom line for me is that this work no longer belongs to me, and that I'm secondary to the work. That's why it's interesting to see what people have to say, what they feel, and how they appropriate the work. What do they see in it? For me, that's much more interesting than what I have to say about the work in particular or about this project. We're living in an age where artists are always expected to put on a show, to look good, to talk more about themselves or their own little navel than about what they transcend and what they connect to other people and to universal humanity. For me, that's what interests me, using a pictorial language with materials to create communication with the invisible and with all universes, all dimensions. It's a project that's come to an end. Today, you could almost erase it, put a coat of gray paint over it. I wouldn't mind. As far as I'm concerned, it exists. And today, it can disappear right away. In a second, it will continue to exist. As long as there's one person who's seen it and imprinted it on their memory, it exists forever. Even an animal, a crow, a rat, as long as it has seen it, the whole universe has seen it. It makes me want to push myself even further, to look even further, in shapes, in faces, in anatomy, in the scene, in movement, to continue with projects, and above all, to pass a milestone, to start making my own compositions. Like Miles Davis and all jazzmen, they play the great classics, Summertime or Time After Time. Like Chet Baker, everyone's covered it, Nina Simone. Here, it's the same thing. There are similarities between music and painting. It's all about silence. And that's why now I'll shut up.
When you think about it, you wonder what will become of it. Like all of us, it will disappear over time. It will surely be bulldozed to make way for a parking lot or a brand new building, and your children will go to work. Yet the essence of this work will remain. Maybe you'll think of it when you visit a big, beautiful museum. The most powerful art, perhaps invisible to those who sell and display it. Art is far more powerful than all that and transcends us all, even beyond time. Here you have witnessed the birth of a priceless work of art, and a stage in the life of a modern artist that will leave its mark. P-Boy has completed his work, just as he began it. In all humility as a disciple of the great masters, giving it eternal life through the decentralized territories of the internets. He left for other horizons, continuing to work ceaselessly on his technique and already forgetting his work destined for debunking. That in the end, all that remains is the final judgment.
Oh mon loulou, c'est qui ça? C'est qui ça? Minos. Hein mon loulou?
Arrête, voyons, putain. S'il vous plaît, monsieur, s'il vous plaît, on vous demande. Oh, il est là. Il est là. Je trompe de personne. Espèce d'enfoiré. Ah ouais. Arrête, sinon on va t'attacher dans les toilettes. Arrête.